What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, another Arch Linux asshole here, and we are back with episode 130 of the video game therapy series. A beautiful sunset in Minecraft is one of the few modern day enjoyments left that has not been beaten out of us by something else. Anyway, I suppose I'll get on my soapbox immediately. I was thinking about, I guess, data collection as a paradigm, in terms of what data collection is and what it does. And I suppose on the surface, it always seems benign, like it doesn't ever seem like, oh, we're just like collecting information to use as statistics. But and this isn't necessarily about even like data collection about humans. It's data collection about anything. It could be about the height of birds or trees or something. I'm not saying there's any I guess any motive behind this. But what I think what you might not realize that data collection does is it does, especially when applied to the behavioral elements of humans, is it creates momentum about something. And maybe this is more specific to humans and not the height of a caterpillar or something like that, or the length of one. I suppose. I guess it would be the length. It wouldn't. I guess the height could be the actual how tall it is. Whatever. Either way, um, data collection about people creates momentum about them. Momentum in the sense that they, suppose that you have, I don't know, you have a tendency, maybe it's a bad habit, a good habit, whatever, to go to the smoothie shop at 3 p.m. And you always go to the smoothie shop. And, I suppose, data collection would then kind of learn this about you again. And whether it's, encoded into an AI of some kind or just even hard coded and like, okay, if X does this X number of times or on this occasion or around this time, we can, call it a pattern of some kind. But part of what this data collection does is it creates momentum about a person that makes it then more difficult to change. So, assuming that you're not a perfect person with like with zero, I'll say like zero vices of any kind. There's nothing that you're ashamed of doing. Every single habit you have is perfect, which of course describes nobody. But presuming that like the counter argument is like we'll just have better habits and the data collection will help move your momentum in the right direction. Most people have very bad habits, and momentum about their habits is only going to make their habits worse. Plus, like if you've looked at television, every ad is gambling. I tried. I mean, oh my god, I'm trying to watch like just one sports game. I mean, I'm not even like this fanatic that spends hours and hours. I rarely watch TV, but I'm trying to watch like one game, and I can't even get. It's like almost impossible to even just sit through a single game because not only like just the I guess the frequency of these interruptions of ads, but then the ads themselves, it's like I can predict to a T what they are. It's like the same like five things every time. It's like, dog food that's healthier for dogs and like dogs that eat better than humans pretty much. Like, feed your dog like caviar. Then it's gambling, okay? That's pretty cut and dry. Then it's like, Ozempic or something like, you're fat, here's like a solution for you or something. Just trying to think what else. Yeah, it's like all either you're fat, gamble away all your money. I guess watch more sports. There's always like a sports ad within a sports ad. Selling you some other prescription or subscription really to something. But there's nothing like again. Where are these ads for like get 8 hours of sleep? Whatever. It's all like brain dead, stupid fucking like ads that don't are just not they're not even like creative. There's no creative merit to them. And I'm not even faulting the people that make these ads because I'm certain that they've done their demographic research and they realize that the only people that watch these sports are maybe like or maybe their primary audience is like boomers or Gen Xers with a lot of money who love sports and have to watch the game. And maybe who like putting $10 on the game just to make it a little fun, or like doing this. So it's all just like gambling ads, or they're overweight. It's okay, fine. Here's a GLP-1 ad. There's that too. But there's no like nothing's highbrow. Nothing's even like they didn't even say highbrow or lowbrow. It's just like you're appealing to like the most basic sense. It's like the only thing less would be like a porn ad. And also there's beer ads too. That's the other thing that's on there. I forgot about this. It's all gambling, alcoholism, or weight loss. That's it. That's like literally probably 100% of commercials. And obviously like dog food that's better. As dogs are eating better than the humans. The humans wouldn't be fat if they're eating that dog food. Like genuinely, the dog food that they're showing in the commercial, you could feed to a human and they lose 50 pounds. Like it wouldn't even be. Not even. I mean, it's just probably just better all around. Like they probably put more effort into it. Either way, it's just like it's impossible to watch a single game. It just drives me nuts. Even muted. So like I'll even watch like the ads with no volume, just because I can't. The volume is just so annoying. I can't seem to do it. But even just like watching them without audio drives me nuts. It just is. I don't know. I don't know if this is just like some people can like tune this out or like they're not bothered by this, but I am just so severely bothered by like advertising as a paradigm as a whole. Much less even like YouTube ads and stuff, which I don't see because I have uBlock Origin and I generally watch stuff on the command line, meaning that I'll use like MPV, which can watch YouTube links that don't have ads, but even like I guess ad reads that people are doing for Morgan and Morgan or whatever, I have sponsor block to not see those. But either way, it's appalling to me that this is the state of affairs with advertising. It drives me nuts. Anyway, I forgot what I was talking about. I was talking about data collection with momentum. So given that, your vices probably aren't perfect and it wouldn't be in your best interest to then propagate, your vices, to the nth degree, meaning that if maybe you have an inkling to gamble, which fine, I guess everyone has everyone's got a sweet tooth or an inkling to gamble, or maybe you like beer too much or something. You get, again, which these advertisers are pinning perfectly. Do you really want that momentum like carried throughout like your profile, right? So like if you maybe interact positively with one, you're interacting maybe in general, not even with one ad, but with multiple beer ads in a row. Is that really all you want to be served all the time? Like there's not like I think the data only, like it only lends itself to more advertising along the same vein. So like more beer advertising, more advertising for weight loss if that's something that if that's your hobby is to ideate ways to lose weight but then never actually do it, or just like your hobby is to dream about changing things despite not. But I think data collection in general makes it more difficult for humans to incite change because the data creates momentum that then is has to be programmatically broken, right, in order for you to not receive more content on this because it's all algorithmically generated, not generated but algorithmically selected. You have to then like go against what your natural propensities are, which might be, again, if you're someone who likes gambling, it might be the propensity to gamble, which again you wouldn't want. So in order to stop this, you really need as little data collection about you as possible, but much less data collection that's not applied to maximize your time on this app. My growing frustration and my growing, I guess, philosophical implication of all of this is that, and I'm leaning more towards this. I've kind of jotted this down today. Maybe I'll write a blog on it later. But um, you know, I wrote this down. I wanted to change the acronym AI instead of artificial intelligence to be artificial intuition, because I think intuition is a better, intelligence is such a loaded word in terms of philosophy. It's going to be hard for anyone to agree on what is a form of intelligence, or even if it is like intelligence can be anything, and then like ants are some degree intelligent. Then it's hard to like assign consciousness to this. Whereas I think I'm more okay assigning intuition to artificial intuition as something that exists. Versus like intelligence, whereas I would, could say, well, it's just a stochastic model, but fine. Even models themselves can have, intuitions, I'll say, which is not to call them conscious at all, but to at least award them the fact that they, again, are allowed to have artificial intuitions. So regardless, we'll say that computers, or artificial things can have intuitions. We'll call it AI, artificial intuition. But one of my arguments is that an artificial intuition is to some degree, at odds with, I'll say, like human intuition on things. So it's like the more we quantify the human experience and codify it into, we'll say, like programmable, options, the more that it might seem that this artificial intuition is the right intuition for us. However, I think people should realize that the codification of human existence is not for our benefit, right? It's not like we're creating ads to help people. I don't know whoever if there's anybody that exists that has this delusional idea that ads in any way of any kind in any time period were beneficial to humans in mass, I would argue that they are a moron, right? And there's not really, I don't really have, there's no valid argument that I can see that justifies advertising as a net good. And the counter argument would be like, well, what about people that like genuinely need, weight loss, these weight loss drugs, and they, the advertisements are for a way for them to see it. Um, One, I think you're relying on the wrong medium at which in which this has happened. So it's like, I mean, do you even see? I guess you might see ads for like government-run programs for getting Medicare or something like that. But it's like we don't see ads for sleeping or for eating, and these are or even just like having sex. I suppose we see like there's porn ads and stuff, but in general, these are like quote unquote advertisements that happen beneath our eyelids that don't need us, that we know ourselves what we need most of the time. And unless you're arguing that people, humans altogether, are too stupid to know what they need to survive, to not go out and seek it for themselves, instead they need to be told what they need, right? And that's all that advertising is oh, I'm telling you that you need this. So like you have to be right in what they want and or sorry, what they need, not even what they want. You have to be correct. And B, you have to assume that they don't know and they're too stupid to know, right? To figure that out. And that would be those would be the leaps in logic you would have to, or at least a logical line of thinking you'd have to agree with if you think that advertising is like a moral thing or a good thing for people to be doing. Again, you're essentially assuming that you're admitting that you think humans are retarded and they cannot do anything for themselves, and you have to tell them exactly what to do and what is best for them. So again, if I'm taking their advice, I'm watching TV and it's telling me, oh, buy dog food. I don't have a dog. I got to go get a dog and buy dog food. Oh, gamble all your money away. Oh, smart, great. I don't have any money. I'm gonna gamble it instead. Oh, drink this beer. Or sorry, it's this non-alcoholic beer. It's like, but like none of these. How could you getting from what the ads you actually see to, oh well, like we want to show people what they need, like they'll need this stuff and we're just giving them, you're showing them that it exists and they can get it for us. Like jumping from a beer ad to people need this, I just don't see as it's just not compelling to me at all in terms of how that logic checks out. It's just not like the ads I actually see, none of them are for things people actually need. Like they're not advertising like, I don't know, go to bed before, midnight, drink plenty of water, right? I mean, maybe like those ads are one in a bajillion, but it's all like, vape commercials or whatever. Nothing. It's not aimed at the promotion of the flourishing of humans. So back to this artificial intuition thing. The more we codify, I think, the human existence into programmable things. So the more we apply quantitative logic and procedural logic to things, the more uh, it might make sense. For hang on. All right. Well, that was a healthy pause. I try to ignore calls when I get these. Sometimes people call and I can't not answer, so I just have to take the call. Um, Anyway, it is harder than it looks to get a full hour uninterrupted. But anyway, I was talking something about human intuition versus artificial intuition. But I think because technology now is so maligned with, I'll say, like human goals and ambitions, which isn't to say it can't be aligned. I'm saying there's certainly, I could point to a dozen technologies that are, I would say, align well with human flourishing and technology. But the prevailing uh, technological products are not aligned very well with human flourishing. And as a result, this artificial intuition will only be uh, towards the ends of propagating other artificial uh ends, artificial, like for the benefit of the machine almost. So you think about it like man versus machine. Machine thinking will benefit machines, and man thinking can benefit man. Now, obviously, man benefit people have been trying to, thinking about ways to benefit machines, which is fine because the end goal is to benefit us. But now that we're skipping over like the point of machines is to serve humanity, and instead trying to in some weird communist way, trying to equalize humans with, a machine of some kind. We're then kind of then transposing the two differences, or at least creating separation between, what's good for machine is not necessarily good for man. In fact, they, tend to be, at odds to some degree, I would say. But either way, I think it's fair to give, I guess, artificial uh, programs, the ability to have, to think intuitively, but it's also fair to then criticize that intuition. Because then it's like, well, if it's intelligence, and you're saying, well, he's, it's smarter than you, it knows more, so like, therefore it's better. It's like, well, no, it might be more aligned to answering in a way, or responding, or giving a program output in a way that will benefit a quantitative way of living. But I'm what I'm arguing is that there is an inherent quality in human qualitative living that is not promoted by a you know AI of some kind. Um, but either way, I don't know. I forgot exactly my main thesis there, but regardless, I just think that machines will lend itself to more machines. Machine decision making will lend itself to more machine decision making, whereas human decision making, while flawed, is still has better potential for positive human decision making. Maybe just because people that wield the power of I guess machines to propagate machine thinking, I guess have that much more leverage over people and human thinking. But I think at some point, that I guess that they'll I guess truly they'll arc out completely, and they'll be seen for what they are. But anyway, I'll move on to something else here before I get too off topic. I was thinking about I guess other people that bother me. That I guess a type of person, or I guess you could call this an occupation, that bothers me a lot is economists. So people that pundits that get on TV or go anywhere and they talk about the economy. Now, economists as a whole, I'm arguing, are they are glorified psychologists that want to have the certainty of a physicist. So they might talk and use data, as if like they're measuring the velocity of a particle. When they're really talking about like consumer spending habits during Christmas time. I mean, they're not. They're kind of likening two different things completely. But the problem is people, you know, then take their certainty, of human processes, and then apply that as if they were real scientists. They're not scientists. There's a good reason why many of the harder sciences don't really they don't look at psychology as like a, not to say it's useless. There's certainly um, you know, ideas and archetypes that are useful within psychology, but to treat it as if it's like, in the same vein as chemistry or as physics, it is silly, and no scientist worth their salt is going to would consider it as such. Um, on the same vein, I think economists are egregiously uh, guilty of coming off as if they were like a physicist, right? And they're like as if they're like the data or the whatever idea they're putting forth is so like irrefutable, as because all of them seem to be very as sciences go. Economists are very opinionated, which I would say in some science, some sciences aren't quite as opinionated as others. I would say like physicists often don't have like grand opinions on things. Psychologists do, economists certainly do. Chemists again don't really have like grand opinions on things oftentimes, but economists more than anybody are willing to just say like, well, this is like human nature. Humans respond XYZ. This is what they do. This is how and they're just very very confident in the ways that they put forth whatever theories they have about how humans work. And then it's like, it's either like, if you don't do what they say, you're doing it like, out of pettiness to disprove them. or somehow they have a secondary, it's like they have some secondary theory as to why that didn't work. There was a I had a friend of mine who was being a moron. He was being just at a party and making and just joking around, talking about being able to predict like rock paper scissors. So rock paper scissors, the game being a completely randomly generated game. So theoretically, like you or your opponent is going to randomly pick one of the three options, and then who wins wins. And maybe there's some like very small psychology to it where it's like you're kind of like making a ball with your fist, and then like you loosen up your fist as to like and not throw a rock or something. I don't know. There's probably something very minor with result with regard to like it being a psychological game. But he went on this like, and he was being funny. He obviously wasn't being genuine. He went on this like, I don't know, 2 hour long tirade on the psychology of people that throw scissors first, or the people that throw rock first, and whatever it was, it didn't even matter. And he was just making it up as he goes. But it kind of reminded me of how economists treat and think about the economy and about like people and how they respond. It's all so programmatic and so predictable that like and whatever their theory is fits so squarely into how humans react that you'd be a fool to think that they're not spitting facts. Whereas in reality they're just kind of like I guess telling lies that are difficult to disprove, and then justifying some theory with again like data that they're collecting to I guess try to prove their own point versus being more objective about the data. I just don't know that anybody who becomes or is an economist has a relationship, has a scientific relationship with data. I think all of they have a very I'll say unhealthy relationship, meaning it's a toxic one where they are constantly trying to get something out of the data that they're collecting. It's not benign by any means, and it certainly isn't anything that is what many would call scientific. But yeah, I guess really my underlying thesis with that being that I think economists are glorified psychologists who uh, desire to have the certainty of a physicist, despite them not being a physicist and them just being an idiot. Anyway, I'll move on to something else here. Let's see. Yeah, I suppose I was also thinking about people that make mistakes. Mistakes certainly do happen; they're a part of life. But I guess, there's a classification of mistakes that I find much more reprehensible than not. And this being like, where does a mistake originate from? Like, I think a mistake originating from a place of passion or a place of anger or even like spite, I think are all less reprehensible than mistakes resulting as a result of what I'm calling is dishonesty. And this could be like, trickery or whatever. But I think dishonesty in general encompasses enough of a range here to I guess to make my point. So people that do something or they make a mistake and it was them lying about something, I think are guilty of 10x the sin of people that may have made a mistake out of passion. They said something while they were angry. They meant it, but they were angry, right? Whatever it was, they were just pissed off, and that that I like that is more acceptable. It's okay. Or they did something out of spite, but they don't like they're not like, trying to like deceive what they did. Whereas I think mistakes that are born out of dishonesty, so lies and kind of fabricated things, that I think those are ultimately way worse than any other kind of mistake. And I'm immediately skeptical of like, it's almost like that Jack Sparrow quote where it's like, you can always trust a dishonest man to be dishonest. It's the honest man you have to look out for. So like someone who has, admitted to making a mistake of lying, and, I'm not saying people don't make a mistake once and then never do it again, but liars especially, why would you ever believe them to be these one-time offenders, right? Obviously, people choose to lie because, they either have a good track record or they expect it to work, right? Unless they're a really bad liar, which again, if, someone's not a child anymore and they've grown up, able to lie and learning to lie and developing the skill of lying, they're probably pretty good at it. And, to an extent where even them lying once is not them apologizing for lying is not apologizing. It's them saying, "Damn, I got caught. I got to craft a better lie next time." Right? It's often not these people who are like, one-time novice liars. Like people generally like get good at stuff that they get good at, and lying being something that you could get really really good at. I fail to see a compelling reason why I would ever trust somebody that got caught in a lie again. Um, and of course, there's obviously different severities of lies. I'm not saying all lies are equal. Lying about the color shoes you were wearing versus like the amount of money you wired somebody, I think are two very very different lies. Uh, but especially lies like on a I don't know, I guess on a global scale. Like if you're lying about, you know, I guess the results of a vaccine or whatever it is that your conspiratorial, uncle is calling the big lie. I think these are ultimately like professional liars, and there's even fields, I guess politics being one, economists kind of maybe being another, of people that make their living off of crafting and telling very very good lies, and just being good at it, and that's just like anything else at the skill, but it's not something that I respect doing. So I don't know. I was thinking about people that make mistakes on things and what the nature of their mistakes are. Whether it's infidelity or I guess that's a mistake in the context of a relationship, but at work, whether you stole a pen from work or something like that, or you clocked in, and you weren't there, which honestly is fine. Honestly, fuck them, whoever you're working for. Fucking as long as you get the shit done doesn't matter. Clocking in is stupid. Uh, anyway, I was thinking about things that I like. I guess the degree to which I'm okay with people making mistakes, and it really depended on what kind of mistake it was. So if it was a mistake where they lied and got caught, I had much, I'm much more likely to look down upon that and be like, well, fuck this person. They're a liar. They're a piece of shit. Whereas someone that just made a mistake of clocking out or something, or not clocking out, where I guess I don't know. There's just degrees of that, and I just don't. I think lying or mistakes born out of dishonesty are much worse than others. But anyway, um, yeah. Let's see here. I suppose there also this is just a greater, I guess, note on craftsmanship, and I'm guilty of this myself because certainly anything that I have been paid to do in my life, I haven't. There's very very few things that I'd say I really really like gave a shit about. Anything that I've given a shit about, like the quality of, has been something I've not been paid for, obviously. And not to say that should be obvious, but anything that I have really, really cared about the quality of and have taken seriously with, the level of detail and precision I'm going for, and just I've really, I guess, poured my heart and soul into, was always just like a passion project, a free passion project. There was never any dollar behind that. But I feel like now more than ever, more people are just like the ability to get paid for something, and for the likelihood of that being something that you give a shit about and are gonna like, I'll say go the extra mile, even to use that kind of verbiage, are just incredibly low. Because I even see people that do, that maybe your job is to even make a stupid ad for something, and you see the ad and you're like, this is what the fuck made this? Like, and this was somebody like somebody got paid for this. This is just a horrible job. They didn't think it through at all. Like, this doesn't make any sense. It's confusing, or it just like paints the wrong message. I talked one time about like this, this like it was like this gun safety ad where it was like make sure they're locked up because like people kill themselves with guns, and it's like, well, is the problem that the guns aren't locked up or that people want to kill themselves? I feel like you're missing the point of like the issue with suicidal people isn't that there's guns around. The issue is that people want to kill themselves. Like that's the problem. It's not the gun. Yeah, sure, the gun is like an easy way to do it, but the problem with suicidal people isn't the ease at which they can kill themselves. It's the fact that they want to kill themselves. That should be what the focus is, not like where's the gun. It's like no, like then you're just torturing them at that point. Like if somebody really wants to kill themselves and is and it's not like a drug induced or just like a panic induced thing, if someone's genuinely depressed, they probably have for a long time, they're probably been suffering, they're gonna find a way to do it. It's not. I mean, I'm not to be cynical here and wish people kill themselves, but like, if they're seriously unable to think of a different way other than a gun to kill themselves, they're not very smart. Anyone who is really suicidal and has thought about it long enough or deep enough can figure out a dozen other ways to kill themselves. A gun is just convenient, and probably a little messy for people, I suppose. But is it any messier than a drug overdose? Because then it's like you're speculating. Did somebody drug him or did he kill himself? Whereas like if someone turned a pistol on themselves, a lot of times that's cut and dry. Like it's not a bunch of extra work for investigators to figure out, did he kill himself or something else? Even like, even hanging yourself is another way to do it. I'm not saying that I'm not addoning any of this. That's not what I'm going after here. I'm just saying that the problem with that ad wasn't the fact that like you're getting at the wrong message. Like if you're talking about people killing themselves with guns, the guns are only like they're not even a symptom of the problem. They're just a tool that is used to solve a problem that people have, and the problem itself is the problem. Suicidal people. That's the issue, not the fact that guns are not locked up enough, right? And sure, I know there are cases of like kids running in there and getting mad at their friend and shooting their friend or something like that. But the pales in comparison to the amount of gun deaths, or it's just like citing the gun deaths without like it's like people 20,000 people every day or 20,000 people a month or something die from guns. It's like, all right, well, fine. That doesn't really paint the whole picture. Are these homicides? Do you include like war? People that are getting shot 10,000 miles away. Is that like, does that gun count? And like, what about people shooting themselves? It's like, all right, well, then you're kind of, then all of the, you're watering down the statistic that, is supposed to be really impactful. But on surface, it obviously sounds really bad. It's like, well, that many people, we got to, is the safety of guns really what's causing that many people to die? Like the fact that it's unsafe, or are people purposely shooting guns at each other, and then that is the number that results? I just feel like even statistics themselves are just fucking stupid sometimes because they just don't like. Even if you want to agree with them, there's so much nuance that it just skims right over that you're like, well, that doesn't make any fucking sense. This is stupid. So then it's like, all right, well then what's the actual statistic you need to use here? But often by the times you get to the actual statistic that's like beneficial for the conversation, it's like so far gone. It's like, all right, the number of non-suicidal, non-war, non-accidental, domestic cases of a gun, it's like, all right, at that point, like everybody's asleep and no one's paying attention to, what the statistic is. It could even be easier to like to hell with statistics. Just say like, something broad like, don't let it be an accident if it's, I don't even know. There's just better ways to do it, and I feel like people don't think about. They take no pride in their, whatever their stupid position is. And which isn't, and this isn't to say that everybody should take pride in their job, because there are jobs that I genuinely think that people should not take seriously. One of those being, and I just thought about this. This was like weeks ago. The TSA. If you work for the TSA at an airport, you do not need to take your job seriously. I mean, I have been harassed at the TSA, and it's just driven me nuts in the past. The people that think they're, I mean, I want to ask them, have you genuinely ever think you've stopped? How many terrorists do you think you've really stopped, in your job? Probably zero, and honestly, like if there was a terrorist that wanted to get by, like what would it be? He'd be sneaking, a water bottle full of, I don't bomb fluid or something. What exactly do you think you're doing taking this job seriously? If anything, just skim people through, and I don't know. I just taking that job of all jobs seriously. I think it requires a certain type of person with a certain uh, attitude or personality that is not one that needs to be taking their job seriously. Anyway, I don't know. The TSA just pissed me off a few weeks ago, and I'm having flashbacks of that. So anyway, let me go on to something else here. Um, let's see. Uh, yeah. So I suppose this is something I've thought about. This isn't really necessarily about, I guess, gender relations. I suppose it could, but I think there is something about control that is at least like the ability to control one's own destiny that is paramount to, I'll say, like a satisfactory life experience. And this may or may not be like a male thing. I don't know if it is, but it certainly is. It's something I think is within all humanity, is our ability to kind of assert our own future and uh, have influence over the direction of our life, or at least think that we do, right? There's some amount of like suggestibility with this. I'm not saying that there are people in genuine circumstances who have no ability to create any kind of different reality for themselves and are just kind of stuck. And even for them, it'd probably be good for them to have some kind of delusion where they believed that they were able to influence whatever. But in general, I see the world as being less accessible to allow you to create your own future. And I've talked about this, briefly in a blog that was about the probabilities and possibilities of things. So as things have become more possible, the probabilities of each of those things relative has gone down. Not to say that there aren't fields that are emerging and that grow, and that you have there's more opportunity now for, I guess, plumbers or something than there was a few years ago. But in general, because of the number of things to do and the relative likelihood of those things occurring, I guess the commitment to each of those individual things has to be a lot higher. And if you fail on any level, you're at a greater disadvantage to then pursue something else. And I think a lot of people now are just kind of locked into things, and uh, they're not really able to, I guess, kind of assert their own will onto the world. And that is, I think, like an existentially frustrating position to be in, where you are pushing towards something or you want some kind of change, and you're just unable to do anything. And I think a lot of people experience this in their job, where it's almost like their job is trading, you know, their uh, their sanity, their mental sanity for, like, brief financial stability, right? Because the financial stability isn't even like, it's not like you take a job once and, like, for the rest of your life you're okay. It's like, no, you have to keep going to the job to then keep yourself stable. But at the same time, you're kind of trading your mental sanity to be able to deal with these kinds of things. And I just see that a lot in people that are just kind of stuck at their jobs. They're not able to get any kind of, because even if it is something as shallow as, like, a promotion, that is, the reason that you're getting up in the morning. Many people, not everybody can be promoted every time. It's like we can't have, not everybody can be, chief of something, right? Because I even seen, like, the ads on gas pumps where it's like you can go from, start working at, Shell gas station. You can be a CEO. It's like, our CEO was once a Shell employee. It's like, all right, well, how many CEOs do you have? Do you have 500? And like in that case, like, is it? Are you serious? Are you seriously expecting people to, like, go into a career expecting that they can one day be the CEO of Shell? It's like, no. So it's like you're just asking them to kind of play, almost like play a lottery, to say, like, well, somebody, we had a winner at one point, so there, maybe you could win too. It's like that's kind of I think the wrong energy to be giving to somebody who's, again, who's about to work at a gas station, right? I wouldn't be hyping them up. And also in terms of other jobs, not to take seriously, I wouldn't working at a gas station. I don't know, just, you really want people, I mean, I guess besides, like, not getting killed or robbed, I don't know why you would, that would be something you'd be yelling at people for. I don't know. Um, Either way, I'll move on to something else here. I'm getting a little scrambled. Um, yeah, I suppose this is in more of a metaphysical rumination on things. But I suppose the desire to understand oneself, and trying to understand the nature of nature itself. And I guess that being something that, uh, I guess, takes up time, takes up mental real estate in my eyes. I wonder if it's kind of a lost cause for me to even bother thinking about. Because, I mean, you think about it, like, I don't know that, thinking about, like, the nature of all reality. If I've come to I guess, a moderate conclusion that it is in some ways inaccessible to, I'll say, like, human cognition and even human aided cognition. So suppose I had all the smartest chatbots or whatever in the world, be thinking about these metaphysical problems. I don't know that I'd ever make appreciable progress so as to convince myself that I've made appreciable progress on something like this. So even if I wrote a book on metaphysics that was, whatever it was, I'm not even sure. I think the nature of it, which I've already kind of accepted as truth, um, being something that's not really, humans aren't really made or created to understand, like, God stuff, right? It's almost like the quote. It's like, God don't play games with dice, or don't play dice games or whatever it is, which is more to do about probability. But in this case, I'm applying it to, like, the ability to even comprehend God-like things, right? I don't know that humans have any capacity for that, because we have I mean, unless there's, I guess, some, uh, I guess, level of the infinite within our minds, and we're able, we are in touch with some sense of infinity, whatever that means. Um, uh, whereas I think more realistically, it's not anything that, will achieve, with a finite mind. I suppose maybe it's also, this is can get religious in nature in some ways, because if you subscribe to a philosophy where it's like this, collective unconscious mind where all minds are sharing one underlying reality, or there's just like a certain, yeah, there's a certain like in touch with the, the oneness of the world. There's like this oneness with the world. Even like mathematicians like Pythagoras and stuff, I think, had this like oneness theory or philosophy, that there was even something in as beautiful as math, there was kind of this, holistic, holism element to existence. And getting in touch with that is, as simple as, I guess, some form of meditation, or just contemplation of some kind. Even so, it's not really a satisfying conclusion for someone who's, I guess, wants more, I guess, concrete proof. But it is something that I think is almost like just this empty rabbit hole, and it's not. I don't know that it's even I'll say, like, cathartic to even think about this. I suppose it feels valuable on one level, in the sense that it, I guess, answers on, metaphysical questions do concern everything, literally. So it is kind of the highest order thinking possible. And, maybe it's, the last thing that, human minds are good for, I suppose. But on a much more practical level, it is almost a useless thing to be spending time, ruminating on. I guess besides any, I guess, future research or something that would come out of this, or some, postulate that would then have applications in, molecular biology or something, which I'm not ever really, uh, quantifying things that much. I'm not really writing formulas when it comes to these, ruminations. I'm, more so just talking about them in very vague terms that, are unhelpful. So I wonder, just, I guess, how much time I'm wasting doing this. And I guess if it truly is a waste of time, the reason I would say it's not, maybe, is, I do think there's all, it often, there's lots of, I'll say, like, even allegories for the way that the universe might work, and how that might, apply to our lives in a way that is, just gives you perspective, right? So even like if you think about like the Zen koans, which are like these little puzzles that the Zen masters would have to, solve and figure out as a part of their thing. And part of the whole philosophy of Zen is like this, almost like this random, like, chaotic element to things. Like, stuff is like not supposed to make sense, but then, like, you being at peace with things not making sense is like how you achieve this. And there's some, it's very confusing, as someone who's not a Zen master, obviously. But it is quite confusing. But regardless, I do think a lot of them, uh, you know, it might start with a metaphysical rumination, and then it ends with maybe a short quote or piece of wisdom that is, was born from that. And I think maybe the argument being, you never really know what comes out of these metaphysical ruminations. It could be something that is, again, very allegorical or applicable to everyday life, and it's, some piece of wisdom that you could share, that you otherwise, wouldn't have gotten, had you not, spent time ruminating. Uh, but there certainly is an argument, you think, practically, I guess, to having my time spent uh, thinking about other things, and not, I guess, the metaphysical truths or falsehoods of the world. But it is something that I keep finding myself falling back towards. So I wonder, as close as I can call things to passions, this might be, one of them. But it does kind of ebb and flow. Many days I do kind of accept this, like, well, this is pointless. This is a stupid thing to be, I guess, thinking about, because it doesn't, really have a point. But at the same time, then you can kind of boil everything down to its, nothing technically has a point at that point, which is, this nihilist philosophy is ultimately very unhelpful, and is not something I want to, fall victim to. But there certainly is, like, things that are, even for like day to day survival. It's like, knowing nutritional info versus, like, obscure Chinese philosophers. It's like, all right, well, nutritional info is probably a bit more applicable and more helpful, and maybe it's smarter for me to think a little bit more about nutrition than, an ancient Chinese proverb. But at the same time, it's hard to know really what comes out of that in the end. So it's like, I don't know. Without the benefit of hindsight, it's impossible to know, what is or isn't a waste of your time. Um, that being said, I don't know. It's just something I find myself doing. Anyway, yeah. So let me move. Let me look at something else on my doc here. I was thinking about, uh, I don't know. I think about my own psychology a lot, and there is almost this barrier that self consciousness creates. So where if you're aware of something, like I've said before, like if you're aware of, you're focusing right now, you're by definition, excuse me, by definition, you're not focused on whatever it is that you said that you're focused on. So it's like you almost need this like, in order to enter into this flow state, you need to be can't be thinking about getting into the flow state, right? You're in the flow state, you can't be thinking about it. So there's almost like this paradox of like, well, in order to achieve, flow, you need to not be paying it. It needs to just kind of happen. And I think Alan Watts put it the nicest way in saying that you concentrate for, one moment at a time. Whereas like even a concentrating for an entire hour is just a collection of one moment after one moment. Um, all this to say, I feel like I'm thinking about my own psychology, and uh, I think something that does help me is like feeling like I'm ahead in some way. Like in when I was in school, I used to always get everything done like as far in advance as I could, which sounds great. Like I was a good student for doing that, I suppose, and teachers often liked it because I was done with stuff already. And I had time in case I really got stuck. I had time. But ultimately, like a lot of that was an excuse for me to, I guess, do other stuff. So it's like I just wanted to be done with the schoolwork, and it's not that like I'd be done early so I could put more time into it. I didn't care. I wanted to be done immediately so that I can not do it anymore, and I would be done. Which I do think that like being ahead, that kind of psychology, I think is still does kind of ring true to me. But the issue now that my goals are more, I'll say, aimless in the sense that I create my own deadlines and things. It's hard for me. It's harder for me to feel like I'm ahead on something. Because there is really no, I can give myself these phony deadlines, but at the same time, I have a difficult time deluding myself into believing any firm deadline on anything. It's like, okay, I tell myself I need to be done, fixing this, thing on the server. Well, first of all, I don't even know how long it's supposed to take. So it's like, whereas, school assignments were often like, weighted in the sense that you kind of knew how long it's supposed to take. Like, they're not going to give me something a week in advance that, takes me 5 weeks to do. A lot of times it only, takes a few days and, they give it to you a week in advance. Whereas like me fixing something on the server could be like, it could be 30 minutes, it could be 30 hours. I really don't know how. I can't judge how long this is supposed to take. And maybe the strategy would then be to like, all right, well, spend some time like, I guess like sourcing how long that you think it's going to take, right? So it's like, all right, work on it for 30 minutes and then see if you have a better judge of how long it's going to take after that time. And then once you have that, then use that to then inform a real deadline. But at the same time, I have a hard time sticking to deadlines that I've made anyway because I made them and I'm an idiot. And I don't, it's not like I'm, quick to, I guess, believe my own, sense of urgency on things. If like sense of urgency doesn't, just fall out of the sky, it needs to be, something has to be driving that. So unless I like, put some other incentive behind it, besides glory, it's hard to, really be done with anything or to move at an appreciable pace. Um, so I suppose in some ways I have to create some form of artificial pressure on things, and that could be through, either, uh, you know, I guess ignoring some sense of like, deadlines or maybe absolving myself of some, I don't know. I just feel like there's, uh, you know, it, I really work well when I'm ahead on things. Whatever ahead being, like working from behind is certainly something that you can get stuff done. But my best work is never like ahead. My best work is when I'm like done well in advance and I have all the time in the world, and then I just kind of continue to add little touches and things and kind of polish things up, slowly and surely. Whereas throwing it all together last moment is not often my best stuff. That's I kind of need time to even ruminate on the things I've done already. But it's hard to do when I have like almost so much free real estate to do. So there's kind of some argument to applying some kind of artificial pressure on deadlines on things that I'm working on. Whether or not I listen to them or not. I mean, I don't most of the time, which is kind of the issue. But I guess I'll continue thinking of ways I could gaslight myself, and that is I've talked about that before. The importance of being able to delude yourself into things. So believing not something that you don't have, you don't truly believe, but I guess buying into something, even despite having doubts and things. In general, like I guess not doubling down on skepticism, having skepticism then drive like commitment on some level. Whereas, I feel like my default mode is to set skepticism drive like inaction. Whereas I think skepticism should drive action, which can then be resolved into less skepticism. But it's obviously easier said than done. But anyway, I don't know. I'll probably wrap it up for there this time. It's a bit all over the place. Hopefully, I can finish this little jungle decoration. And it looks all right. I need to figure out some way to light this better. I don't like this lighting and stuff here. I want this to be a little bit more natural and cool. But anyway, I'll work on that next time. Thanks for watching, and peace out.